You guys must be pros at this by now.
We've done a lot of them lately.
Holy
Really been enjoying them too.
Yeah.
We've done 30 in 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
cow.
Well, well, this is the first one we're doing with this format, so um, I appreciate your willingness to bear with us on it.
Sure. Sure.
You're our first guest speakers.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
Quite a privilege.
Well, it feels so in alignment with what we do as well. So what's God offered here, just the different things that you've offered, the people that come to you, the wisdom.
Right?
Thank you for appreciating that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really enjoyed when I was reading your book, An End to Arguing, your latest book. Just how relevant things, you were framing it within the terms of relationship, but I mean, it had a much broader application as well, to just how we live our life, and called on to be in relationship all the time. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad.
We really see relationship as a microcosm for our life in general, and the way in which we operate in that, and the motivations we have, and the things that drive us there, and the way we respond in that relationship tells us everything about what our stance is in our own life experience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's clearly, I mean, I think sometimes with spirituality, people divide the world in two. There's their spiritual life, and then there's worldly life, and it's not two things at all. In fact, it seems like if we can't apply what we learn while we're sitting on a cushion in day-to-day life, how much value does it really have?
Yeah, that's true. They say that the real test for how enlightened you are is how you are with your family when you go home for Thanksgiving.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Because it's really way back then that a lot of the conditioning gets established, and there's gives us plenty of things to think about and to work with, when those are all revisited at a later date, when we think we're well beyond them.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
I love the quote from Trungpa Rinpoche, who says that relationship is the fast track to enlightenment.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a cultivated taste. It's not for everybody, and we're to admit that too. Committed partnership is not necessarily for everybody.
Yeah.
So, again, very happy without it. But for those of you who are in it, here's a few things that you might want to be aware of.
Yeah. Great. Well, it's 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And so, even though we've been chatting already, I'd like to more formally introduce Charlie and Linda Bloom, who we're delighted to have with us tonight. They're both well-known psychotherapists, educators, seminar leaders, and authors, especially in issues relating to relationships. And they've been doing this for over 40 years. They're authors of 5 books, including 101 Things I Wish I Knew When I Got Married, which is a bestseller. It's sold over 100,000 copies. And their latest book, which I've read recently, is called An End to Arguing, which is, I would say, it's the content-rich book and practical, and just a very useful and honest and straightforward approach to this topic that I've enjoyed reading a lot. Charlie and Linda will be presenting an in-person event here in June 9th through 11th at Wellbeing Retreat Center. And they developed their skills through 52 years of marriage and in working with many couples and in real settings, rather than coming to this topic through the academic avenue. So they've had real world experience with what they're talking about. So I'd like to welcome Charlie and Linda to the show tonight. Nice to be with you.
Very much. Thank you for the invitation to come and join you in your community.
Yeah,
Great to be here, Dan. Thank you.
yeah, we look forward to meeting you in the flesh, so to speak, and having you here. Yeah, we feel like it'd be really a valuable contribution to what we offer here. Charlie, I was listening to a podcast just in the last day or so, and the host asked, what is the most important thing about sustaining a healthy relationship? And you said 3 words: enlightened self-interest. And those are 3 words you don't often see in the same sentence.
Yeah.
So, I mean, usually there's enlightenment over there and then self-interest over in the other corner. And I wondered if you'd like to explain what you mean by that in terms of its importance in maintaining a healthy relationship.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Don. It does seem kind of incongruous to put those 2 things in the same breath. But yet that is precisely what makes relationships as powerful and as challenging as they are. Because relationships, healthy, successful relationships, and I'm not just talking about romantic partnerships or marriage, but any relationship requires 2 things. It requires a commitment to be a commitment to the relationship itself, and a willingness and a desire to be aware of and fulfill the needs of the other person in the relationship. In other words, to be willing to put aside your own self-interest in favor of them. However, as many of us know, that can be very dangerous to do that to an extreme. Most of us are predisposed to either be focused on the other person in a relationship or to be more focused on ourselves. But a relationship requires us to be committed both to the relationship itself, to the other person, and to our own well-being. So that can be tricky, and it also seems kind of paradoxical. Well, how can I be both simultaneously? And yet that's exactly what we need to be able to do, and that's what enlightened self-interest is. It's the recognition and the awareness that when I really do commit to serve this person and be committed to their well-being without sacrificing or diminishing my own commitment to myself. And in doing that, they will benefit, the relationship will benefit, and I will benefit. It's the awareness that when I do that, then it's a win-win-win.
Yeah, it seems like so often the thinking mind likes to, say, well, which is it? Is it the other person, or is it me? Or and sometimes the answer it's both and really meeting that and feeling into both of those needs. I wanted to talk a little bit about what is relatively common in most relationships. I know I tried out this one for more years than I'm going to admit publicly, but this one is about trying to change the other person. And it seems like it's based on the premise that well, if everything was just the way I'd like it to be, then I'd be happy, right? And so we feel secure in our need to try to make that happen. And so the only problem with that is it doesn't seem to work.
But other than that, it's a great.
Other than that, it seems like a good idea. So I was wondering if you'd like to just talk more about that tendency and, where it comes from and what the resolution of that might be.
The tendency is strong because if things feel a little off or a lot off in the relationship, it's so obvious what the other person is doing or not doing or saying or not saying. It's much more demanding practice to look at ourselves and see the way in which we're participating that may create that chafing and that, dis-ease.
Yeah.
And so if we can commit ourselves to doing our own work and keeping our attention on ourselves, we're way better off because we can change the way we dance with them. And the way we step and the way we become more graceful will have an impact and an influence on the other person. But you're absolutely right, Don, about the direct approach about trying to change another person is just going to make them feel unloved, unappreciated, not valued, and probably kind of resentful and resistant that they're not being loved as is. But we can't not speak about our own experience, about what enlivens us. What lights us up, about what it is that we vision that we might co-create together and appeal to their enlightened self-interest that they may be better off too if they join us in collaborating with how to manifest that vision.
Yeah.
Not really changing who they are, their basic personality and the core of their being, but there may be some behaviors, there may be some ways of speaking or listening and communicating that would really enhance their life as well as our own.
Yeah, you just mentioned listening, and it seems like people have different interpretations of what that word actually means. And I was wondering if you'd like to elaborate on what you mean by like genuine listening.
Well, I can speak to it because I think that that's the less valued of communication skills. When people think about up-leveling their communication skills, they think about becoming more articulate, about expressing their feelings and their needs. And of course, that is essential and valuable. But the other part of it is being a black belt listener. That you really hear the other person, that we're practicing committed listening, that we're not distracted by screens and phones and other distractions, even kids or career or tasks in the house, that when we show up we really are fully present and we show up and we listen well. And I will be grateful all my days to Sylvia Borstein for teaching me a term. And she's talking meditation. Talking meditation is that we slow down the rate at which we interface with each other's messages so that we really deeply take in what's sent to us. That's hearing at a deep level and not shooting back our response so fast. We be with it for a little while and then we give our response back to them, and hopefully they're playing with us too. That make it a meditative practice, and we really hear each other on a whole different level, on a heart and soul level, which is so connecting and healing in a relationship.
Yeah, I think the other person can really feel that too. When we're really present for it, and not just while they're talking, thinking about the next thing we're going to say, when we're really present for them. You just mentioned something that I think is maybe a chapter title in your book, An End to Our Arguing. And it was talking about slow down. And sometimes when it seems like when our responses are so quick that, we're coming from automatic pilot. We're coming from our own conditioning. And, so you also mentioned in your book, just when when we can feel that triggering effect coming on, it sort of surges up from somewhere. And, before we blurt out something that we'll regret in a few hours, just sort of slowing down enough to notice that, and allow just that presence to be there and see that. And it seems like when we do the reverse, that it just reinforces that conditioning. Do you find that to be true, or in our dialogues, if they're just too quick?
Yeah, Donna, we live in a culture that the more I slow down, the more I realize that the norm for our culture is to travel at what to me I experience as warp speed.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning most of us are moving faster, and not just in terms of our physical activity, but in terms of our reactivity in our mind and in our behaviors. Moving faster then is really good and healthy for us. I know in terms of my personal natural rhythm, I didn't realize that it was quite a bit slower than the pace and the rhythm of most of the interactions that I have had in my life. And so I thought that it was normal to constantly be trying to keep up with the pace that other people were operating at. And that when I didn't, I assumed that, I was just kind of slow and, needed to get with the program.
Yeah.
But then I found out through my work with other people that I was not alone in this, and that many people were having a lot of difficulty trying to keep up with what they thought was good, right, and normal.
Yeah.
And so bringing those pauses, pausing in between the reception of a message and the reaction to it.
Yeah.
Just give yourself a moment or two to take a breath. Can make a world of difference. And what happens is that it can actually slow down the rhythm of the pace of the situation or the person with whom you're relating.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the rhythm that we call normal in our culture, and one of the ways in which I discovered this, Linda and I do a lot of traveling, and we particularly enjoy going to third world countries and indigenous cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them operate at a slower rhythm.
Yeah.
And they're also all more geared towards spirituality as opposed to materialism. I don't think that's just a coincidence.
No.
Yeah. I would, in your book, I think within the first few pages, you sort of casually mention here are 12 essential qualities, right? And the qualities are I'll just read them because I think they're significant. Generosity, humility, responsibility, integrity, humor, vulnerability, honesty, compassion, courage, self-trust, adventureness, and patience.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me of those. Those are 12 that we picked out, but in the book we actually list more than that.
Sure.
We're not saying that that's a complete list, but those are the ones that particularly relate to relationships, but they also relate to your own sense of personal worth and value.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I was struck by that list is first that the similarity between applying those principles in relationship and what actually is valuable in spirituality is very similar. I mean, I could easily list the same virtues, right? More, and I would say more important than one's path, one's particular practice, how one meditated or anything, just, and, you know, any one of those pointers, you know, could be the subject for a whole book. And so I think it's just an example of what, you know, what you communicate, and is just really content rich. You know, there's a lot of material, a lot of really useful material there. What I want
to interrupt you just for a second, Don, because
Sure.
I want to put in a plug for our new book.
Okay.
Because I think that that's the most important chapter in the book.
Okay. And then to arguing, right?
The one that we put, you know, that have those qualities and the other qualities in there, because those are fundamental to any healthy relationship, including your relationship to spirituality. And we also talk about, you don't just choose or get those qualities. You have to, they're all kind of dormant within us, but we have to reaffirm them through our intentionality and our actions. And we talk about the practices for each one of those qualities and others, the practices that we need to engage in that will reinforce courage, that will reinforce integrity, that will reinforce honesty. Because they don't just, you can't just choose them. You've got to cultivate them and reaffirm them through your actions.
Yeah. It seems like I'd like to explore just one of those. And that would be responsibility. So I presume you weren't talking about who washes the dishes. It's a different kind of responsibility there.
Well, no,
It includes that.
Includes that. Yeah.
Includes that. Okay. Good.
Some of the so-called trivial parts of
Yeah.
life. And I'm saying that life is made up of a lot of trivia, because those little things like who does the dishes and who picks Johnny up from soccer practice, do you know, they're going to be constant requirements of our life. And to use all of the challenges in our life, from the small, medium size to the biggest ones, about, you know, what's the purpose of our relationship? What's the purpose of my life? Being in a body in this world. And so it all counts.
Yeah.
And so taking responsibility is such it's a demanding practice, and it's got enormous payoffs, a bonanza of benefits when we move higher on the responsibility chart, like the other qualities too. We become a more emotionally intelligent person, and our relationships can hit the thrive zone. You know, we work with people who are in a lot of trouble. We've been, you know, seeing couples who are angry and feel betrayed and abandoned and hurt and controlled and all of this kind of thing. And one of the most challenging parts of our work with them, whether it's in a workshop or the counseling setting or the intensives that we do that are day long and 2 days, is having people self-observe, to take responsibility for the way they're contributing to the difficulty, and not holding themselves as some kind of a helpless victim. And when people make that leap in their thinking, then the therapy starts to really work. Then the workshop, they can take it home, do you know, and it really is going to live for them. But when you're feeling powerless because you don't see how influential you are when things aren't going well, you've contributed somehow. And when things are really smoking hot, wonderful, you've contributed somehow. And to see the places where we're influential, do you know, where we're causal, and that has everything to do with our intentionality that's related to responsibility.
Yeah, it seems like one dynamic that can be quite destructive. It's just this movement to, sort of say, you made me angry, as if the responsibility for my anger lies in the other person. And would you care to talk about that some more? Just, taking responsibility for one's own emotional state, own sense of feeling.
Yeah, well, the example that you used about you made me angry, or you hurt me, or this is what I'm experiencing and it's your fault.
Yeah.
That absolutely is an expression of a belief that my experience and the way I deal with it is caused by an outside agent, which we have found not to be true, because at any given time, somebody could respond to me in a way that activated strong feelings in me. And at another time, depending upon where I am in that moment, my reaction to that may be very different.
Yeah.
And so we are responsible for how we respond to the stimuli that activate experiences within us, but we're not responsible for what we experience, because experiences just kind of show up uninvited.
Yeah, we don't have any control over that.
And to have certain things happen to us.
Yeah.
But so it's really important to responsibility doesn't mean that you're responsible for everything, but it does mean that you do have the power and the responsibility to deal with whatever it is that gets triggered within you in reaction to whatever came in to your experience.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things you talked about in the book is non-reaction. And I was curious how you saw that in relation to mindfulness.
Thank you for the question. It's quite a practice when we get triggered to not be a reaction machine,
Yeah.
to go to blame, to go to criticism or withdraw,
Mhm.
and to pause to reflect. A moment of mindfulness can settle us down. Just that breath or two can allow us to drop into a deeper level of awareness, so that the place we speak from is more apt to be constructive rather than destructive.
Mhm.
Because our initial impulse may be to speak from our thinking. You're impossible to deal with. You're doing it again.
Yeah.
Rather than, okay, I'm triggered in this moment. And what am I experiencing? Am I feeling hurt in this moment? Did that frighten me? Did I feel threatened? And when we can speak from the more tender place of hurt or fear, the chances of having a constructive interchange where we have learning and understanding going on rather than more combat, it makes the conversation so different. So I think that taking on the practice of mindfulness, not just sitting, in a meditative pose on the cushion, but throughout our life, particularly when we're in our deepest relationships, our most meaningful relationships, that's where the rubber meets the road. I mean, that's the test to see whether all that cushion sitting is really going to pay off.
Absolutely. If it doesn't pay off there, then what's its value? So, yeah.